Your brain thinks saving money is an emergency, not a metaphor, not a motivational scare tactic. A literal biological emergency, filed in the same category as being cold, hungry, or standing too close to something that could eat you. And until you understand what's actually happening in your nervous system when you move money into savings, every strategy you've tried, and every one you'll try, is going to keep collapsing in exactly the same invisible place. Picture the moment. You open the banking app. You initiate a transfer. Maybe $50, maybe $500. The number in your checking account drops. And something happens in your chest that has no logical reason to be there. It's not panic, not dramatic, just a low, quiet discomfort, the kind most people explain away as "I'm just not wired for this," or "I need more willpower," or "I'll get serious next month." You've probably tried the apps, the spreadsheets, the 50-30-20 rule, the automatic transfers, the accountability systems. You know what you should do, and yet the moment the balance drops, something in you resists, and you genuinely don't know why. Here's what behavioral finance research found after decades of studying exactly that question. Saving money fails for most people not because they lack motivation or discipline. It fails because the act of saving sends a very specific signal to the oldest part of your brain. And that signal is not "well done, future self thanks you." That signal is "threat incoming." And this is the part that matters most, because it's not just interesting biology. It's actively working against you every time you try. Every time you feel that discomfort when your balance drops. Every time your nervous system reads it as danger and you push through it or avoid it or rationalize it away. Your brain doesn't file that experience as "saving is difficult." It files it as "saving is dangerous." And it gets more protective next time, more persuasive, more efficient at talking you out of it. The harder you try, the stronger the resistance becomes, not because you're weak, but because your brain is extraordinarily good at its actual job. Here's the hardware you're working with. Your nervous system was built for an environment that stopped existing roughly 10,000 years ago. An environment where declining resources meant something very specific: cold season approaching, drought, competition, the tribe running low. In that world, when resources started dropping, the animals that treated it as an emergency survived. The ones who stayed calm while the food ran out did not. So the brain evolved a simple, ruthless rule: resources going down equals threat response. No exceptions, no footnotes, no nuance. The rule does not include a clause for savings accounts. It was never updated for direct deposits or high-yield interest rates or strategic long-term financial planning. It was written for a world where anything leaving the immediate vicinity was probably gone forever. What the brain knows is this: checking balance drops, resources are declining. The guard dog starts barking. It doesn't matter that you initiated the transfer. It doesn't matter that the money is sitting in a different account with a slightly better interest rate 10 feet away. To the primitive brain, resources left the perimeter. That's the whole alarm. This is why saving money consistently feels like fighting yourself. Because you are. You're running a 21st century financial strategy through a brain that's still scanning for winter. And the stress response that fires when your balance drops, that quiet, irrational unease, is biologically identical to the response your ancestors felt when something was actually going wrong. Same neural pathway, same cortisol spike, same low-grade fight-or-flight activation. Your nervous system cannot distinguish between "my finances are under threat" and "I am deliberately building financial security." Completely different situations to your rational brain. The same alarm code to your primitive one. Now here's where it gets useful. There are people who find saving money genuinely effortless. Not motivated for a few weeks, effortless, actually effortless, the way breathing is effortless. They set money aside, don't experience it as sacrifice, and genuinely cannot explain why it's difficult for others. Most people assume those individuals have more discipline, better habits, stronger financial upbringing, the right personality type. They don't. What they have, accidentally or deliberately, is a brain that learned to file saving under accumulation rather than loss. When their checking balance drops, their nervous system fires the feast response instead of the famine response. Their guard dog learned, somewhere along the way, to tell the difference between food moving to a different cave and food being taken by something dangerous. What looks like discipline from the outside is just a conditioned biological response. And conditioned responses can be learned. So here's the rewrite that changes the math entirely. Discipline is not the variable. The emotional marker that your brain attaches to the saving action, in the split second before and after it completes, is the variable. Think carefully about what that actually means. If the reason saving money feels physically uncomfortable is that your nervous system stamps it with a threat signal the moment your balance drops, then no amount of motivation is going to override that stamp. Motivation lives in the prefrontal cortex. The threat signal lives somewhere much older, much faster, and much less interested in your 5-year financial plan. You don't need more motivation. You need to intercept the signal. There's a 3-second window between the saving action and the moment your nervous system decides what to feel about it. A narrow gap where the brain hasn't committed to a response yet. That's where the redirect lives. At this point, most people think, fine, I'll just automate everything. Direct deposit to savings before I ever see the balance. Out of sight, out of mind. That works for a while. Sometimes for months. Right up until the day you check your checking account and it's lower than expected because of the automatic transfer, and the threat signal fires anyway. Or you find yourself periodically borrowing from savings for things that don't feel like emergencies, but feel necessary in a way you can't quite explain. Because automation didn't change the signal, it just rescheduled when your brain catches up to the pattern. The primitive brain is persistent. It eventually notices that your available resources are consistently lower than they feel like they should be. And it draws the same conclusion it always draws when resources feel constrained. Automation is a detour. The redirect is a different road. This is the wall that people who are doing everything right keep hitting and can't explain. You've automated the transfers. You've cut unnecessary expenses. You're technically saving money every month, and there's still this background hum of financial anxiety that has no logical source. A quiet voice insisting the number isn't big enough, isn't growing fast enough, still isn't enough. That's not a budgeting problem. That's a signal problem. And no amount of restructuring the numbers silences a biological alarm that hasn't been taught a new pattern. Here's what the 3-second redirect actually is. In the 3 seconds immediately following a saving or spending decision, the moment after you initiate a transfer, or the moment you choose not to make an unnecessary purchase, you attach one specific thing to what just happened, a concrete, sensory image of reserves growing. Not an abstract thought, not good financial decision, not I'm being responsible. A physical image of accumulation. Some people picture their savings balance climbing to a specific number. Some imagine a tangible container filling. Some use a single phrase out loud or internally, something like, "One more layer between me and a cold season." It sounds too simple. That's the point. The primitive brain doesn't process financial strategy. It doesn't understand compound interest or emergency fund targets or debt payoff timelines. It processes survival imagery. It understands feast and famine. It understands exposed and insulated. The redirect speaks the only language the guard dog has ever understood. What you're doing is training the accumulation circuit, the feast response, The reserves are growing signal to fire before the threat circuit can file the same action as evidence of danger. You're arriving at the junction first, planting the right flag, and walking away before the wrong flag has a chance to go up. Do this consistently for 2 to 3 weeks, and something shifts. The saving action stops feeling like subtraction. It starts generating its own quiet reward signal, not because your reasoning changed, but because the brain learned a new association. The alarm stops firing. The behavior stops requiring effort. What used to feel like fighting yourself starts feeling like moving in the same direction. Now the 3 specific applications. Because the principle only produces results when it's attached to actual moments in your actual financial life. First, the standard transfer. Anytime you move money into savings, however small the amount, apply the redirect in the 3 seconds after the balance drops. Not before, not during, after. That's when the threat signal forms. That's the exact moment you intercept it with an accumulation image before the brain commits to a response. Second, the spending decision you don't make. When you pass on an unnecessary purchase, a coffee, a subscription upgrade, an impulse buy, your brain often registers that as deprivation too. A slightly different costume on the same threat signal. Apply the same redirect. You didn't lose a purchase. You added a layer of insulation. The third application is where the most significant shifts happen for people who have been fighting themselves for years. The ones who have tried every budgeting system, every financial psychology framework, and still feel like they're running in sand. It targets a moment most people never think to address, the financial status check. Every time you look at your savings balance, your brain makes a rapid judgment in milliseconds. Is this number evidence of security or evidence of how far you still have to go? For most people, regardless of the actual number in the account, the primitive brain files it as still not enough, which is just scarcity signaling wearing a different uniform. Another quiet alarm. And every time you look at a growing savings balance and feel vaguely inadequate about it, you're training the wrong circuit, the one that keeps moving the finish line. The redirect here isn't about the number being bigger. It's about what the number represents in terms the brain actually understands. You look at the balance, and for 3 seconds before your nervous system decides what emotion to assign, you attach this. Layers of insulation between you and a cold season that isn't coming. That number isn't a score. It isn't a progress report. It's a buffer between you and exposure. And a growing buffer is the exact signal your nervous system was designed to feel relief about, if you teach it to recognize that's what it's looking at. Your brain learns what you consistently teach it. Every saving decision you make runs through a circuit that was wired for a world that no longer exists. But circuits rewire. That's the one feature of human neurology, the caveman version of you never anticipated, and the one that changes the entire game. The question isn't whether you have enough discipline to save money. The question is which circuit you've been accidentally training every time you try, and whether you're ready to spend 3 seconds training a different one.